Greetings, my name is Justin Jones-Fosu. I'm your host of the 7 mini episode Everyday Diversity series, and today we're diving into episode 3, and that's stupid stuff smart people say. Now, I have a question for you as we talk about intent and impact. Have you ever done or said something stupid? All right. Now, I should be raising like one, two, raise my leg, right? Ask my kids, right? And for me, this came about understanding this dichotomy, but also how intent and impact work together. So, kind of, let me share a story with you of when I said and did something very, very stupid. So, I remember when I first started speaking, I was speaking with the agency, and there was a lot of other speakers who were part of this agency. Some of them were mentors, or at least unofficial, right? People that I looked up to in the industry. And I remember I had to speak before them, and I was terrified. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what are we going to say? And all this kind of stuff. But I gave my best effort. My kind of customized Justin energy with research-based content, right? And so combining those things. And so after I finished speaking, several people came up and they were in a line. They were like, "Great job, Justin. Really loved your presentation. Great energy." And after the line was done, I was feeling good about myself. I was like, "Yes, they like the content, they like the energy." And then this one lady, Cindy, she came up and she was at the end of the line, and she started off the same way everybody else started off. Like, "Great job, Justin. Really liked your presentation." I was like, "Thank you. I really appreciate it. I was feeling good." And she was like, "Justin, do you mind if I give you some constructive feedback?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, there's a part of me that was like, "No." but externally, I was like, "Yeah, like, I want to grow. I want to get better." Right. And she was like, "Justin, I know this probably wasn't your intent, but the same, many times in the presentation, in the same sentence, you referred to men as men and then women as girls." And I was like, "Wow." She was like, I know that's probably not how you want it to come off, but I wanted to make you aware of how that can be seen." And y'all, I had no idea I was doing that. Literally no idea. I had no concept that I was calling men men and women girls. And it hit me so hard in my heart, even how she approached me, that even if I'm in circles of people just identify as male, and I hear them talk about and saying the same sentence and doing the same thing I did, and I'd be politely jump in, "Women," right? Because what it did is I realized something super powerful at that moment is that she approached me and she did two amazing things. So I want to ask you, what were the two things that she did? What's the first thing? All right. Now, some of y'all are like, "Well, she gave you a compliment." No, no, no. Don't do the sandwich method. Like, "I really like your blazer. Your face sucks, Justin, but your socks are amazing," right? I have some nice socks, by the way. But, it's like, no, like, don't use the sandwich method. People know that, right? But she did two powerful things that I think should be a part of our platform or opportunities to utilize. And the number one thing that she did, the first thing she did, is she first asked, could she give me feedback? The second thing that she did is that she assumed I had positive intent, right? She gave me first the permission to be able to receive that feedback. And if I would have said no, then she didn't have to give me the feedback, right? Or she would have said, "Hey, I think you still should know this," but at least she gave me the permission to be able to say yes. Second thing she did, she assumed I had positive intent. She didn't come at me like, "You misogynist pig. You hate the very woman who bore you." Right? No, she didn't do that. Right? But I loved her approach. Because let me give you a secret. If you ever want anyone's walls to come up immediately, don't do those two things. Don't ask to give them feedback and assume they meant the absolute worst. And my friends, this is what we often do, right? Especially to those that we don't have trust with. Because when we trust someone, we give them the benefit of the doubt. We're like, "Oh, they didn't really mean it that way." We have like kind of a background. But when we don't know someone, when we don't understand, when we don't haven't built up that relationship, which is why meaningful relationships are important, we often go to that worst case scenario. But you know what that says to me? It says something interesting because we wouldn't want someone to do that for us, right? Because I believe this statement to be so true that we tend to judge ourselves by our intent while we judge others by their impact. Now, let me talk about the difference, right? Because there's on one side of the story, there's the intent piece, right? But just because I had positive intent didn't mean that it wouldn't translate to a negative impact. And I have to be humble enough to hear the voices and stories of other people to say, hey, is what I'm saying and or doing causing damage and or harm? I'm humble enough to receive that and decide to make the change. But on the other side, just because I receive a negative impact doesn't mean that that person had a negative intent. And I also have to be humble enough in mind for intent and be able to ask the questions about what did this person mean? In giving them the benefit of the doubt and learning and understanding, just because they had a good intent doesn't minimize their impact. So it doesn't excuse them. It doesn't say, oh, well, it's okay. We have to call impact an impact, right? But it does allow us to approach it in a way where we don't automatically always assign evil intent every time we receive a negative impact. And so my question for all of us is, how will we begin to challenge some of the stupid stuff as smart people that we say and or do? And so I ask you, question is, what will you do? What will be your action, right? Now, one thing, and let's be honest and open, as we enlarge our circles and as we are more inviting with people, we're going to do and say some stupid stuff. It's just a part of the game, right? It's part of the nature. When we go with the posture of asking for forgiveness, of sometimes I preemptively share, like, hey, I'm probably going to say the wrong thing, so please forgive me, right? Like, I do that. When we take the posture of humility, it allows us usually the grace that other people will give us as we engage. So what will you do? All right? What will be your action? Do you know? Just because you had a positive intent doesn't mean it's going to be positive impact. But also just because you received negative impact doesn't mean it was negative intent. And ultimately, ask to give people feedback and assume that they meant the best. Even if they didn't, it allows a learning and teaching opportunity that wouldn't be normally afforded if walls are up. Sometimes some of the things, the most stupid things that people say or do, we've heard all these different things, like, can I touch your hair? Yes, you can, right? Or, oh yeah, you're really intelligent, or like all these other things that some people might classify as aspects of microaggressions. We do and say some stupid things at times that many of us be educated. Let me give you one example. One thing I hear a lot from people, it's like, I'm colorblind, right? And one of the things that I used to get really mad when people made that statement, like, oh my gosh, and I would confront people and I wouldn't do those two things. And I remember as I started practicing this more, I started digging into some research and realized that for a part in our history in like the 70s and 80s, there was this aspect of colorblind was seen as good, and so it's kind of carried over. Right? And so we challenge people, it's like, hey, don't be colorblind. I want you to see my color, but I don't want you to normally attach some of the negative stereotypes and typical things that are attached with it. See my color, but value it. Right? We say some stupid stuff. We're smart people. But the question is, how will we consistently, in a humble posture, move forward, hearing the stories and how it impacts others? It's not about being PC, but it is about hearing the humanity of people. So, one way that we can begin to consistently engage is, I'd love for this semi-smart person, I'd love for you to stay connected with me. I'm Justin at workmeaningful.com. You can catch me at social media at iWorkMeaningful at all these places. Tune in for the next episode, or watch episode 4, where we dive deeper into the right-hand paradigm. And as we talk about the right-hand paradigm, is what privilege is really all about and how we can use it for the good of others. It's a really, really good way that we can address some of the things that we do and or say, but to use it for the good of others. Thank you so much for watching this episode for the 7-mini episode Everyday Diversity series. Stay tuned. Again, I'm Justin Jones-Fosu. You can catch the rest of the series at this YouTube and YouTube link, as well as you can catch More information at workmeaningful.com. Thank you so much, and until next time, bye bye.